No. Oh, here. Yes. I'll do a swap here. Signs life away. Oh, all right. I thought I already did this. What was that one then? No, that's workshop. Okay.
Thanks. Morning, councillors, staff and members of the gallery. Good to have you back here again for our monthly meeting. I'll hand over to Councillor Stewart to do acknowledgement of country.
Could you? We'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land, the Kabi Kabi, on which this event is taking place. We'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and the ongoing connection to the land, sea and community. We pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and we also extend that respect to all other people present.
Thank you. I will now hand over to Minister or Pastor.
Whatever you want to call me. Daniel.
We've got plenty of adjectives.
Yeah, I love a good adjective. Yeah. Well, thanks for the invite. My name's Daniel, whatever you want to call me. And I'm from the Prezi Church, Presbyterian Church, and thank you for your invitation here, councillors, mayor, staff, and members of the public. There's an ancient wise saying that to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. I reckon that's pretty true, isn't it? Kids know that they can get away with anything if they ask while their parent is reading or watching something. Can I buy some more coins for the game? Whatever you want. And your credit card gets a beating, doesn't it? And you might have experienced answering before listening on council, speaking into something before you've heard the whole story. They're wise words, aren't they? To answer before listening is foolish and can lead to shame. One of the phrases Jesus often said was, whoever has ears, let them hear. But Jesus challenges us to listen well before answering, to listen well to him before making up your mind about Jesus. To fail to listen well wouldn't be wise. I'm going to pray for this meeting and also for our community. Let's pray. God, help us be wise today. Help our councillors and mayor to listen well before they answer. May doing this lead to wise decisions being made for the good of the Gympie region. And we humbly ask for your continued provision, even as we give thanks for the rain received this week. Give us all ears to hear. For Jesus' sake we ask. Amen.
I'd like to all rise, for those who can, please stand for 1 minute silence just to remember those who have recently passed away in our region. Thank you. Councillors, we have section 1, disclosure of interests. Anything to declare? Right. Any apologies to leave of absence? We have section 3, confirmation of minutes. Have a recommendation there in relation to the ordinary minutes from October 25. Is there someone to move? Councillor Smurder, someone to second. Councillor Baldock. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We have no petitions before us today. Nothing from the Office of the CEO, but we have something from Corporate Services, item 6.1. Is a later agenda item. And I'll hand over to Mr. Chair.
Morning, Mayor and Councillors. Nick Sheehan, I'm Manager People and Culture. So representing Mr Lewis today, the Director of Corporate Services, who with Ms Hathaway is at the Local Government Financial Professionals Conference at the rainy Gold Coast. So I'll do my best to get through the report for you, councillors, and I have my colleagues up in the gallery there to help us with any questions. My first item will be the Corporate Services report, the quarterly report. As a department across People and Culture, IT, Finance, Communications, Business and Engagement, we work on a number of different programs and they're provided for your information. Before I start though, I'd just like to acknowledge a new team member, if I may, councillors. Miss Tanya Bailey has joined us as the new Manager of Communication, Business and Engagement. So Tanya's attending today, so welcome Tanya to the council.
Thank
Here
you.
all of 4 weeks or so now.
Yes, fourth week. Good morning, Mayor Hardwick, councillors, gallery and fellow colleagues. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. I'll take the report as read. I just thought I might highlight a couple of things. I'll stay away from the finance side because we'll get to that in part of the finance report. You'll see from the IT area there's quite a focus on cyber security and some of our testing through McGrath Nicol. So we're pleased to see that as an organisation that is a key focus for our IT team. Other things that are probably of interest to the councillors, we're upgrading all of our technology in our rooms and meeting rooms. This one will be included around the Teams link. So we'll have better audio visual and actual microphone setups. We're also introducing Teams calling, so that'll remove a lot of our desktop phones from our offices. So just a normal update on technology there. Across the People and Culture area, myself, pleased to say we've now got a trainee program back in place for council. So any of you there in the gallery who have sons, daughters, grandkids who are interested in working in the council, we'll have 2 roles coming up. They're on Facebook and other platforms at the moment. We're getting really good interest for people joining council and seeing how it goes as a career path. That's an entry-level position for anyone really. So we also very pleased to have our first summer break internship program just commencing this week. We've got 3 interns from local universities starting with us, one in human resources, one in the environment and waste area, and another one in the planning area. So great to see those young folks getting a job after university, or they might be still studying, particularly in some areas of hard to fill jobs like planners. They're quite hard to get in this current market. Across the communications, business and engagement area, Ms Bailey and her team have been working hard on the economic development strategy, looking at working on the events for the Christmas period coming up. There's a couple of those noted there. Quite a attendance of workshops with the Mayor and other councillors regarding future projects for economic development in the region, and also a biosecurity forum which has been held recently, which is good to see in part of our sustainability program. You'll see the various events there, staff celebration dinner, Mary Street party, and things coming up in regards to Christmas on Mary ×2, which is always a popular event from what I've seen in the past. New Year's Eve in Nelson Reserve and our Australia Day celebrations. So that will be funded partially to enable a fantastic event. There's also a focus on tourism and branding, so pleased to see that for the region. I think that's the highlights of the report. Are there any questions that I may take through you, Mr Mayor?
Questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart?
Mr Mayor, it's good to see the staff survey, and I'm just wondering whether an appropriate version of that we made public.
Ask the CEO for that one responsible.
Thank you. Through the Chair, it's something we are looking at now, so at this stage we're circulating it to the organisation. We'll make some decisions on that in the near future.
Not expecting all the detail, but the overview of it, I think it's appropriate for that to be public.
Something like that may be appropriate, yes.
Councillor Calder.
Couple of quick ones to the Mayor. The data recovery centre, I was trying to understand what that was, but I'm assuming that just meant the backup servers. So you're getting rid of them and going to the cloud. That's
Right.
Right, that's what I
as
thought.
we prepare for the ERP upgrade, so bringing that to the cloud as well,
Right, yeah.
and having it audited.
one other I had. I'd like to see the fact you got exit interviews. Yeah, which is great. Can we know who Hatch HR is?
Yes, certainly. So through you, Mr. Mayor, there was a request that we look at some external exit interview companies. So we did a quote, and Hatch HR is actually based out of Darwin.
Right.
They were the best tenderers and they had a pretty good service. So what we offer is people who leave council get an email to say if you'd like to have an exit interview with an independent, you can contact this email address and a phone number. They'll actually follow people up as well. We have noted it's been quite low take up, but we also are very pleased to say we haven't had a lot of resignations of late, so that's possibly why the take up is a bit lower. And we've only had 2 people take up the service so far and provide some feedback. So
That's voluntary.
it is voluntary,
Yeah, right.
yes. Yeah, can't really
Yeah.
force someone to do that. So they are quite proactive in following people up. Would you like to, take up our survey or provide any feedback?
Yeah. You say only a couple of resignations, but you had 15 people leave. So they weren't resignated.
We would provide the service to. So not always everyone gets the same the same email.
Right, yeah. Another one I just was briefly, I can't find it now. The OpenGov thing, which I thought was a great idea that we can see stuff, but I didn't realise that was being outsourced and costing us a bucket load of money. You're going to give it to Red somebody now.
Okay.
Where was it?
Yeah. We've always had it.
Started back.
On page 11.
Oh, Redmond, so we're not doing Redmond, you're opening up to the market now. No, I always assumed OpenGov was just part of our, interface with the internet, people could see stuff, but apparently it was a whole system running in the background. It's called OpenGov on page 10 and 11 of the report. Yeah, go for it.
Councillor Mills?
Mr. Mayor, just to follow on from your question, I did read the OpenGov and I have been aware that we've been running through that OpenGov platform. I didn't personally like it. I'm just wondering, we're going to a more cost-effective and in-house solution through Tech One. Is that going to enable to more real-time information and transparency information that the public would want to see instead of what was locked into the OpenGov kind of system, which is just financial? That's my question. Is it going to basically expand our transparency ability? We're doing in-house.
I probably couldn't really answer that directly, having not worked with Tech One product for quite some time, but given that it is used by a number of councils and the reporting transparency that we look to provide, I would expect that it will have that. Certainly I know from an internal perspective you get a lot more data on the dashboard in regards to what we have now, which is no dashboard. So we're certainly hoping for a significant improvement in data and transparency of information.
That answers my question.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Milne?
Which one? I can go one. It was some of the event stuff that we've got coming up, and it did take my attention that 12 months ago we were talking about our Mary Street events and things like that, and we agreed on a model that funded X amount of events with a future look at how we move forward with these events again. I noticed that we're still hosting those. So my question is what are we looking at in this space? Are we going to continue hosting as a council, or is another organisation? Because that's what was spoken about, I think it was 12 months ago, in November meeting last year, was having another organisation. So I was just wondering on those models.
Just aware that you're probably new to the history.
I can take that on notice.
Well, I can give council some detail. A grant was sought by Skill Centre to use the Mary Street events as a training opportunity for people to get a qualification, and that was the intended pathway that we would move down. We are waiting for Skills Centre to skill up and take on that role in that space. Currently they do work in Maryborough and the purpose was to duplicate that in Gympie with those events. But in the meantime, there's a necessity to continue that service for our community while those people get their ducks in a row. Councillor Milne?
I'm just interested, you said they do stuff like this in Maryborough. Can you expand on that model at all? So just get an idea, is it going to be exactly the same what we do, or is there a different version so they do get the skills that they need through those events?
Well, I think the idea would be that they get the skills that they need through the events. What model they use would be something that Skills Centre would determine based on the grant funding parameters. So we've had preliminary discussions with them, and we're just waiting for them to come back and say this is what we plan to do before we hand over to them.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Milne, someone to second. Councillor Stewart. Councillor Milne to speak.
I always like these directorate updates. They do give a good overview of what's happening within that Department of Council. I think this is very thorough. There's a lot of good things in there, which is, I'd like to highlight, we've got some help desk for ITC, which is extended, and the use of hours, which I might have to access myself. It's great to see the workforce strategies, the staff survey, and the indication is there is those green shoots we saw before actually growing, which is why I'm keen to have that actually out there. Good work, and I do make comment that there is noted that the CEO and staff have made a good effort to making that road to recovery. The safety highlights for October was really good, having Safety Month there, so lots of activities going on. It's great to see economic development starting to gain some traction and actually having the investment prospectus being developed. Even though we don't have a strategy at the moment, I knew that was one of the goals for doing that. We're getting a New Year's Eve festival or a New Year's Eve celebration in Gympie, which has been great. I don't think we've had one since COVID, so it's good to see that. And highlighting the disaster management space, just came from somewhere this morning and got a lot of positive and progressive feedback that it looks like we're in good hands. Coming into the summer season, we call it, not the disaster season, the summer season. So look, all of this information is here, and I would also like to highlight, again, as I always do, these would be great documents to have made into a document and actually published on our website. So I always say that, but I'm happy to move that we note the topics as an update. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, yeah, good report. I'm pleased to see that the finance managers are talking with managers and directors across the organisation to help keep things running tight. Look forward to the fleet review coming to council. I assume it will. In terms of OpenGov, I've been underwhelmed by it, so I think whatever system we come up with will be better than OpenGov. So other than that, I'm happy to move that we receive this report.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against, any other speakers for? Councillor Fredman.
I think the highlight of the report, Mr Mayor, was the staff survey results. Basically, while this is unofficial, it is official, that an increase of more than 10% across all of the measures. I think it's proof that the tide has turned. I can't say that any more profoundly, because we've been on a very, very bad out tide, and now it's coming in and it's looking good. So this information is public information, and it's highlighting that during this term of council we've managed to turn the ship around. It's a wonderful, wonderful paragraph to read.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Milne to close.
I just thought to read out on Councillor Fredman's comments there about the staff survey. It was a highlight of this report personally, to actually see that we are growing and we are changing that culture. I know this is your department, and I look forward to seeing what, under the leadership of our CEO here, what the future will have to bring. So thank you. But
with that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.10. Later technical item.
6.10 comes last.
are you doing it now?
6.10.
Jumped to the last.
Oh,
Send it.
oh,
It's fine.
good old info council. The quarterly, this pending actions report is outstanding actions from, decisions made by council. It's an administrative report that comes back to show where we're up to in progressing action items. I'll take the report as read. Are there any questions?
Questions, councillors? Pretty straightforward. Councillor Milne.
Oh, it's just on, we've had this on the action report the whole entire time, was a Tin Can Bay pool lease, and it's still progressing, and that's just where it's sitting at this stage. So we're waiting on those assessment reports, which I believe by that report have been completed or near completed, and then they'll actually influence the rest of the lease negotiation.
Any other questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there. There's someone to move. Going to rush Councillor Milne. Someone to second. Councillor Deborah. Councillor Milne to speak.
I don't think there's many comments I can make. It's only 2 action reports. One has been finalised and one's still ongoing. So I thank you for the report. I'm happy to have it.
Councillor Deborah.
Nothing more to add.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Milne closed.
Happy to move to the vote.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Can you take Councillor Deborah's? Next item.
Item 6.2.
I was out of time.
Request to repeal Gippy Regional Council's Code of Conduct.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm hoping this is as easy as the last item. It is really just a duplication.
Don't hold your breath.
Okay. So what we've got is the state government have released a council code of conduct that's been on the website for quite some time. Previous management had a pretty much a copy, cut and paste and added a few things for Gympie Regional Council. Through our governance reset framework and advice from the department, this is just a duplication and it can be confusing, whereas all councillors across Queensland refer to the one document, which is the one which we want to have adopted today. So basically, in order for that to happen, we repeal the GRC, or the Gympie Code of Conduct, and then replace it with what the state has presented to all councillors across Queensland.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Polly?
The tricky bit's in your phrase, they cut and paste, we knew that, but then we modified it to suit Gympie. And I know, it's a bit hard to read the two and go, so can you tell us what the major difference is? Because these will be things that I'm assuming we're going to give up.
Yeah.
No,
It's a template. It's pretty much template and a few bits of minor wording that just as it came across into that template.
Right, so...
It's a templated, and if there is any other it's just a few words. The intention is to be clearer and consistent across all of Queensland, so we adopt the Queensland Council Code of Conduct. There are minor differences, and to me it was pretty much a cut and paste. The wording too.
Councillor Deborah?
Thank you. What minor differences? Which words?
I'll have to come back to you, councillors, with a version to show the thes and the ands and the different things that are in there. But I'll do that if that's what's required.
Councillor Milne?
Mr Mayor, in saying that, I did read both documents, and the legislated code of conduct behaviours were pretty much a cut and paste, exactly cut and paste. So it might have had Gympie Regional Council written here and there as adopted, a modified to his particular council. But I read in that the actual behaviours or the actual code or legislated was exactly the same cut and paste. So there was no changes in those areas whatsoever.
So you cannot change legislation.
Yes.
And it was also picked up from external parties that you can't have different versions. So it's all about version control and all about councillors when they go through their induction programs or different, management of applying their roles as councillors, that we all work off the same version, and that's the state's version that's been prepared.
I can't.
Councillor Polly?
I've asked a question. I can't.
So if Gympie Regional Council has a lot of policies, procedures that we do, and part of our job is every meeting we review something.
Yes.
So if we give this up, go back to the state, have we sort of given up any of our rights to review it or change it? Because we're now them reviewing it?
So the policies that council review are to be localised, and they may have a legislative framework such as the planning scheme that will follow through things. But the whole idea of council reviewing a policy is to put the local slant or the local value, create value there. This document is purely about roles of councillors and how it's adapted or applied in relation to behaviours and how they behave in the community, and also how staff and everyone else knows what the role of a councillor is and what the standard of behaviour is, and that's set by the state. And that's when a councillor becomes a councillor, that they are very clear on all roles. And you don't only just work in Gympie Council, you also work with other councillors in other areas when you go and consult, and that's why we all have to be on the same page.
Councillor Polly, there is an option, as with every recommendation or policy or strategy, it can be changed by resolution of council.
Correct, but we're giving that up at the moment, really? Giving up the one that we chose, no?
No.
Okay.
If we adopt adopt a councillor code of conduct, you can repeal that code of conduct and adopt another one. There's no. It's a resolution of council. That resolution of council can be repealed, and you can adopt something else if you feel that change needs to occur. So you're not locking yourself into this for life if you feel it's too restrictive in some ways or inappropriate. Councillor Devereux.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on that though, it is not as easy as that sounds, because you've either got to convince staff that you want to do it, or you've got to put in a notified motion to get that done. So it's better to get it right as we can straight off the bat. I do, even with Councillor Milne's assurances there, I do have concerns without knowing. You're saying for ease and everything. If it's just, adding in Gympie Council or whatever, that's not a change as far as I'm concerned. But you said to make things easier, there's a few words. I'd just like to know what they are.
Sure, through you, Mr Mayor, to make things easier is about for external parties or others as well, looking in that we're all throughout Queensland on the same document.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by ease.
I mean,
Nothing else
my concern is that to make it easier might be to make it harder or more narrowing for a councillor. So that's my concern, if I'm honest. So can you give us an example even? Can you think of anything that...
The examples that I can give is just it's on a different template and a few words, like you said, about Gympie Regional Council being added in where it may have said Queensland or others. But I can come back to you with a marked up version to show you, just to make sure that you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, I can't lay it on the table, can I, Mayor, because I've spoken and asked questions, or can I?
I think at any point we can, if councillors feel that they need more information, there would be no reason why we should continue forward. I mean, part of the purpose of our discussion is to uncover areas where we feel like we might need information. You may not have that initially, but during the discussion that may be discovered, and I think it would be a very poor choice to continue on if councillors as a whole don't feel like they have enough information.
Well, if allowable, I would like to lay this on the table, just so I want to be really comfortable, and it's only another month. So, that's my...
So you're moving that over 2 weeks, Secretary?
Second that?
Councillor Polly seconded. Is there any further discussion in relation to moving it on the table? Councillor Devereux would like more information in relation to the changes between both guidelines, so he can be comfortable.
Thank you.
Before voting.
Just a track changes.
Yeah.
Like with the fees and charges,
exactly.
CEO delegations and other things like that. Yeah.
Did underestimate that one, didn't I? Yeah, I can do that.
We always like to have changes tracked.
Yes.
It's probably nothing, but just...
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's all fine.
So we have a recommendation there, councillors, that the matter lay on the table until further information can be obtained. Does Councillor Devereux or Councillor Polly wish to speak?
I think enough.
No, I think we've said our bit, yeah.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Polly, Councillor Smerdon, Councillor Hartwig, Councillor Jensen, Councillor Devereux. Against? Councillor Fredman, Councillor Milne, Councillor Wardock, Councillor Stewart. The motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to item 6.3, acceptable request guidelines. Hand that one over to Hatch again.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the acceptable request guidelines and staff interaction policy is a newly created policy, but using legislative requirements of the acceptable request guidelines that sits in the legislation. We have discussed this policy at workshops, and information has been taken from that workshop on our views of how we can communicate together as an organisation through to councils, ensuring that the councillors get enough information for them to be able to do their roles, and also for staff to be all working together towards the goals of a strategic plan. The inclusion of the staff interaction policy is also that staff, it's clearly outlined for them on their roles and responsibilities, as well as how they interact with councillors. And this came up through a number of occasions, through different incidents that have occurred where, you know, there are requirements for staff not to be giving some feedback to councillors because they may not have the whole picture, or they may not have the strategic view, and it goes to the manager or the directors to give that input so that councillors are provided with the best information that we can as an organisation provide. The policy also provides a process and systems, because we all know, we've heard that we're going through all these different systems at the moment, and how we can use our systems at this point in time to make our efforts most effective. That is by giving clear direction on where to contact, when to contact, definitions of what information is under the legislation and advice, opposed to regular inquiries that you may have from constituents, and how those are managed and the timeframes provided. So this policy that we went through at the workshop, there has been some changes in addition in relation to legislative definition of what information is and what advice is under the Act. But it is presented to you for consideration today for adoption by Council.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Milne?
Mr Mayor. I'll just start with the most concerning that I had with it was part 13, and it was discussion of council matters with council staff outside of a council setting. I would just like to understand the definition of a council-related matter in this section. Is it a council-related matter under the definition of the request guidelines, which is not ordinarily available to the public, or is it any council-related matter? Because there are two different things.
In the definitions folder, in the schedule, you've got a councillor's request for advice or information. Councillor's request for advice or access to information is that which would not normally be made available to the general public.
Yeah, so under section 13, when interacting with staff in any setting, a council-related matter is under those definitions. So say if you said to a staff member, I don't know, is such and such book available at the library or something, it's a council-related matter. You can discuss that because it's available to the public.
Yes.
But you can't ask something that would be covered under this guideline for acceptable request.
If it's not to stunt conversations happening, and we all have the ability to make a decision and use our decision making. But if something is available to councillors and it's just easier to ask a staff member who's there, that's fine. It is more about your reporting and when you put in requests for information, that how we process these things to make that most effective. The other thing is to be very clear about when a councillor asks a staff member something, that staff member may, all well intended, give the best information they can, but it may not be at that level required to have other information the strategic information provided. So that's where this policy is. This is what's trying to get the objectives right in this policy, is that level of information coming back to you.
Just to clarify, I'm just more about culture between just staff and I remember there was a time that it was a little bit difficult. I'm having conversations because no one knew information or just that, that level. I don't want to have that type of culture come back into council. So it's having that, if it's just an ordinary, the public can know and they talk to the public about it, you can talk to that outside as normal people.
Yes,
so if it does fall under what is defined as not information available to public, it comes under this guideline, all conversation ceases and we go through this policy. If that comes up outside of in normal life. This is interaction number 13.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And a staff member could always talk to their counsellor about issues that are affecting them in their division. That never stops that happening either. But this is the best framework that we can come up with through consulting with all the directors, all the managers, and with yourselves at the workshop to make it effective. And we can also change it, like we can see how it's working, come back with statistics and just see how it is actually improving things or not.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Pollock?
Just in relation, following from that, I'm just trying to understand. Sorry, if I'm in an organisation and I know all the members of the organisation, I probably know, like in a club, the members of that club if they work for council. But I have to confess that I wouldn't know 3/4 of the staff that work for council. I could just be somewhere chatting to somebody about anything, and they could bring up a topic and you do your thing. So by mistake, I suppose it's by mistake, because I didn't know they were a council staff member. So does any of this come back just to go, or you had the conversation with so-and-so, don't do it again, or it almost just shuts down conversation other than the weather to some degree, I don't know. So I'm just trying to understand, I could break this rule very easily, multiple times. I suppose.
Or where it's a constituent and staff member, and I think you did mention it, but still, they come to you as a constituent, don't know their staff member, and then where do you cross the line?
Yeah, so it's going to be by mistake.
Lines you can cross that you don't realise.
I don't know. Just so that it's like we've got the sword of Damocles hanging over our head at any moment, ready to fall, and we will stuff up. And I'd just like to have somebody maybe slap you on the wrist and go, "Oh, by the way," before a letter from the OIA comes up with private and confidential. Believe hissy fit.
I think the intent is that you can have those normal conversations about council stuff that you would have. There's the information that we collect as councillors that is sort of for the public, and then there's other pieces of information that is confidential. That confidential realm, you wouldn't have a conversation with, a mistaken conversation with a staff member about that anyway, or you probably shouldn't. Because you wouldn't have that with a community member either, because there's issues with it. So I understand your concerns, and I don't know whether there's some language that we could change in this space to make it more palatable, but it's not designed to stop those conversations that we have with the community members, or if a staff member approaches you and you don't know that they're a staff member. I mean, it's a bit hard to say, hey, you've crossed a line and you didn't even know the line was there.
Yep.
But also too, I mean, we do interact with staff on a day-to-day basis in some way, shape or form. I mean, it may not be day-to-day for everyone. It's understanding, what we can say in those spaces, and obviously we don't give directions, we don't get involved in, scuttlebutt or undermining, other people. So, I mean, is Councillor Mill?
Mr Mayor, may I make a suggestion? I know I've made several, and this is one I did bring up, and it's under maybe the definitions, because the only line in there in the policy that gave me concern was the non-definition of council-related matter. So possibly council-related matter could be defined as a matter that's under definition of information or advice as an acceptable guideline, so not an ordinary made to the public. So that council-related matter is under that definition. So any other, you could just talk about normal stuff. It's because my fear is that this might be a little confusing for a staff, because this is a staff interaction policy, that definition council-related matter hasn't been defined. It's not defined in there. It just says it's a very loose definition, council-related matter.
So that councillor request for advice and information, which you and I discussed.
Yep.
Are you saying to change that to that councillor?
No.
Or add it?
It is
Another one?
define what council-related matter means in section 13. It could be in your definitions, so it could be the definitions council-related matter is any matter under the request for advice for information section, which is not normally made to the public. That would define what that means, and it gives a surety to both parties on what could and couldn't be discussed in or in out of council.
Yep.
That's my only suggestion.
I guess my concern with section 13 is the dehumanising. Definitions just create great opportunities for lawyers. The reality is, if I'm at a social event and we've just purchased one or two graders, and a grader operator comes up to me and goes, "Oh, Struth, I wish you had got the Cat rather than the John Deere," or vice versa. To me, that's a normal conversation. And as a councillor, I want to know why they had preferred the Cat. Now, they might just say, "Well, I love driving Cats." And I could say, "Well, part of the report that we received that staff had been spoken to, or the operators had been, the matter had been discussed with them, and this was, their recommendation." Those things help councillors understand how well our organisation is functioning. And I know there is a fine line there, but, part of a frustration of an elected representative is if you shut down all conversations with staff in every way, shape or form, then there is no way to actually gauge whether or not they're being fed the right information. And, part of the challenge we had last term was that in so many different areas in our organisation, I don't believe the majority of staff enjoyed that process at all either, because there was so much dishonesty within our management. We don't have that now, but we can't rest on the fact that we have people that of character now. We have to put in place provisions that allow the checks and balances in an appropriate way. And I think everything has to be done with goodwill and the appropriate intent. And I'm concerned that the wording in 13 might be a little bit restrictive long term.
Council-related matter is too broad, so
Fine.
if I miss opening at the art gallery and I see the art gallery director down the street and ask how did it go, that's a council-related matter.
But
It may not be in your in what the intent is, but it's still a council-related matter.
General member of the public can ask that question.
exactly.
Yeah, but still a council-related matter because it's about an opening at the art gallery. I mean, so we need to be,
Fine.
the definition is just, there's no definition there needed.
See how we got to that.
So through yourself, Mayor. Look, I do think we've gathered some commentary on this, so we can work on that section to make sure we can address some of those.
Councillor Deborah.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. In the acceptable request guidelines, I haven't been able to find the council request for information form that's noted a few times, OCF 518.
It's on the internet.
When I do a search, it doesn't come up
On the internet.
on the internet, so it's not on our council page.
Internal.
I thought we had it. I've got one.
Well, that's great.
Not using it anymore. Do we use it at all?
I've used it a couple of times.
We're mostly using emails because that's more efficient.
Yeah, but it's in here, so
Yeah,
But
there
it's being
is-
repealed.
It is.
Won't be used in the new,
It won't be used?
No, I can send you that.
no, it'll just be the email.
The idea is to repeal that requirement to write another letter and put it in your email, just send it.
Good.
It was basic.
Okay, anyone else?
Councillor Benson.
They're replacing a 3-page document with an 11-page document. For me, reading it, there's just too many guidelines now. Like we struggle as it is with our 3-page document. Too many processes, too many guidelines. I find the whole lot's too restrictive for us to do our job as a council. That's all.
Councillor Polly.
Getting back to my point before, actually, I realised I'm going to do 13 every second day of the week. Let's just put that out there.
Don't admit it.
Well, the issue is 14. If there is a breach, what happens, I suppose? And I didn't mind the first one that says if there's a suspected breach, they can put it in writing to, I'm assuming that's Nick, yeah? Or the CEO, and the CEO can come around and have a chat. But it's probably more like the B, where it says if there's a breach, as it often happens, just go straight to the OIA, and that's what freaks us out. I learned most of my stuff in the first 6 months from about half a dozen OIAs that said, I broke that rule. Oh, I broke that rule. I won't do that again. To the point where you just pull your head in. I haven't said a single thing on my Facebook council page for 4 years because I'm not game to say anything. He shut his down, and so the other one. So I suppose the question is, we are going to do it, but the question is, how is that breach handled so that we are taught a lesson and guided somewhere, I suppose, is that the chance? Yeah.
Ex-CEO Stats.
So we will take this back. We had to go to a workshop to try and grab some of these. Obviously, we'll need to do another one of them. But the intent here is to, and I think with the OIA one, that's a matter of legislation that right exists to move across that path.
Yes.
If you want to. We're trying to get the balance right. We're trying to get that ability to have you have a sufficient freedom to do what your role demands, but also for the officers to have clarity in terms of the ability to have someone who's at the right level to be able to shape the conversation with full knowledge of events. So obviously, we haven't got this to your satisfaction. We'll have a look at that.
Councillor Miller.
Because we're still existing under the current guidelines, which I do remember back in the day I was not actually for, because it actually restricts us under the current accept or request guidelines. Portfolio councils can actually go and ask directors about their current portfolio. If you're actually outside of that, you have to go through the accept or request guidelines procedure. This is what I liked about what we're being presented today, was it actually, and this is my question, it does allow a broader approach to being able to ask for information, because the current guidelines that we're under, by the way they're written, is actually very, very restrictive. This one's not. There's only that one concern of a definition, once that's defined on, So it's a broader ability for councils under the new proposed guideline.
Councillor Stewart.
And I particularly like section 10 because it makes it clear how to make requests.
Yes.
I did get into trouble the other day because someone sent me an email, so I thought the easiest way to send an email on to Gympie at council, and I got an email back saying no, you can't do it that way, it's going to go through the council portal, and I thought that's a bit odd. And so I don't know whether we could add into the customer service requests that we could send it through the Gympie.council, or whatever that address is. No, council@gympie.qld.gov.au. If that could be added in.
All right.
Just checking with our manager of governance.
We just need a review of the documents.
So the elected members seek a review of the document. Does that lay on the table, or do we withdraw it and then push it back in a new form?
One more. Allowed? Mr. We'll give an opportunity to review this document and put feedback in. How many feedbacks did you get?
Well, through the workshop, we got a bit of feedback and then your response.
So there's been, what I'd say is, I did bring this up before there actually are quite a few changes that assist us all as an organisation, individuals, that I did, and you've taken on board, which defines the document a lot. It was only that one definition of council-related matter. If council-related matter could be defined as being covered under what is not defined under this, we need to request information for. If that is defined as that, then anything else that we talk about in everyday life is not covered under this policy. It nullifies those conversations about grades. It's public knowledge. So that wouldn't prevent those conversations.
You arguing for or against?
It's, well, I'm trying to define, if we define council-related matter as a document as it exists, because it actually, the development of the document is actually quite good. I'm happy with it. If you define it.
The end of it is the document, whether it's other councils in relation to section 13 or yourself, councillor Mooney, you want changes to the document. And I don't think the majority of councillors in the room would vote on a definition without first being able to read that definition, and you're asking for a definition in that document. So to move things forward, because we do have a long agenda, I think it's best if the document goes back with the or some consideration and changes, and perhaps Mr. CEO, if it's possible to email those changes to council so we can comment upon them before it is presented back to council.
Thank you. Through yourself, Chair. We'll have a look at the best way to do it. We'll sit down and brainstorm to see how we can get this to please everyone.
So do we need a resolution on this, Ms. Hatcher, or we can just
We can
proceed with the next item?
no, you.
Move a motion to move on to the next
I'll
item.
move, we'll lay on the table.
We're going to lay it on the table.
Councillor Stewart has moved it, lay on the table. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.4, the first quarter update. Hand over to.
Look, some of the questions. That's why Winchester said.
Yeah.
Oh, no. No, it's not listed.
So the first quarter update on the operational plan is the first report back to council on how we're going in relation to meeting the objectives that move us towards the strategic plan objectives. Not everything council does is on the operational plan, but these are the ones that have been decided and working within budgets to move us into that direction where we're heading. In the report, it does have some potential delays there that which are listed out and are being managed by directors and management and coordinators. There are some achievements that I've listed there as well, and the operational plan update report has been presented in a way that we can bring the community involved and put it up onto our website so that they can then also read it and be able to find it very clearly and easily. So the quarter plan update report is presented to you. Any questions on it?
Any questions, councillors? Right, let's.
I was waiting.
Too slow.
I'd like to give an opportunity.
Councillor Deborah.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. If we go to, and it's page 158, there's item number 4 there. Engage with councillors to develop an advocacy plan and advocacy material, which is to be engaged with state, federal government stakeholders by the third quarter of next year. So that would be the first half of 2024, would it? Is that the way I'm reading that?
Yeah, Mark.
Yep. Now, there's already been some advocacy documents. I'd just like to know, how do we go with those advocacy matters?
Over to manager of communications, business and engagement. We could take it on notice if you wish. The advocacy.
That's fine to take on.
Regarding the advocacy documents, do you mean the economic development advocacy document, or?
I think it might be better.
Yeah, take on notice, that's fine.
Take on notice?
Well, I can give some detail, Councillor Deborah, it may help. Yep. A lot of those things are works in progress. Some of them, there are different funding opportunities that we're looking to utilise rather than ratepayer funds. Water, for example, there's been success in that space with 4,000 extra megalitres allocated to council. There's always a devil in the detail in that there's a requirement from the state for council to have its own storage. which is, I guess every ratepayer will buy a bucket and collectively we'll store that water for a time of need. And I've had discussions with the Minister and the DG around the interesting approach that the state has taken in that space.
Don't we have a dam?
Sometimes common sense isn't the prevailing outcome, Councillor Devereux. So the discussions and advocacy around storage of that extra allocation is ongoing, and particularly given a large project that is occurring in Barumba in the future or might occur. Those discussions are centred around ensuring that perhaps that allocation might be there.
Just to through yourself, Chair. So there has been work done on a series of projects as they arise, but in terms of your direct question, engage with councillors, that hasn't happened, so we'll do that.
Yes, yeah, but I'm just wanting to know, because we're, at the end of 4 years coming up,
Yes.
and there were some stuff done up, and specifically, around the hydrotherapy pool is something I would like some information back on, if that's all right. What advocacy has been done there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll have to do that internally, Councillor Devereux. There's some discussions I've started in relation to legacy project opportunities that
Wonderful.
just to keep in.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Keep going. Page 161, item 10, implementation plan for the divestment of council-owned properties. The plan's been implemented. Just wondering how we're going with that,
I'll have to get
because that's been coming along for a long time. That was before our term even, that started.
I'll have to hand over to the Director of Infrastructure Services on that one.
I wasn't ignoring you.
I know.
I was actually quickly flipping to page 161. Councillor, through yourself, Mr. Mayor, what I can say is we're actually in the process of finalising that whole strategy in relation to that divestment. So, and that will be coming to council. Would like to think straight after the new year. Sorry, I'll just through yourself. Obviously, the challenge for us is the caretaker period, etc.
Yeah.
But I can actually guarantee that it's nearing completion.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all for you. I'll just have a look, yeah. Building and plumbing?
Building and plumbing is a different.
Andrew?
Come on down. Yeah.
I have to get a bat.
Yeah. What number?
And item 21. It's just going with the 70% applications processed within certain timeframes. How is that continuing? I realise this was, it's not the very latest stuff.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, there's been some resourcing issues in the building plumbing area recently. We've been working specifically on the building side of things, looking at other options. Obviously, recruiting an in-house building certifier has proven difficult in the current climate, and so we're looking at other options as to how we can outsource or utilise private certification to assist us to process those applications.
In short term,
Yep.
man? Yeah. Wonderful, thank you.
There is internal training of staff in that
Right.
space as well. For certification.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, we've taken the opportunity of training our own, and we have appointed a builder who is working closely within our certification team at the moment. He aims to obviously obtain qualification to become a certifier, and I guess long term that will help us build our own capacity within the organisation to again, serve the community in that space.
I mean, the concern is that, we want progress out there and things to happen and people that are prepared to spend money to be able to spend it. So, yeah, that's good to hear. Thank you very much. Thanks, Andrew.
Anything else, Councillor Devereux?
Of course. Just on item 17, the previous page, just in terms of the planning scheme, It says workshops with councillors continuing in addition to scheme drafting. Workshop is scheduled first week in December to discuss first draft of the scheme with councillors. Is that still accurate?
There will be, through yourself, there will be a workshop, I think I'm check schedule, but discussion of the first draft is extremely.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you very much. That's all I've got.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there. Is there someone to move? Councillor Mills, someone to second? Councillor Stewart, Councillor Mills to speak.
First, I'd like to thank staff for actually bringing this document back. That is something that we can actually now publish on our website, because I believe that is the drive that we're doing for this financial year, and it's so pleasing to see that the format is easy to read, it's got good layout, there's no repetitive of some of the background corporate documenting in this. It's a companion document to the original document, and I love the graphing, and I'm actually really, really pleased with what staff have come up with to make this easy to digest for the public. Some highlights that I liked was a local law review. I'm really looking forward to seeing the updates. I know it's been delayed a little bit because of the dog work, but that's something that we're going to be making some really good movement this year. It's a little frustrating to see slow movement in the environmental projects below that space, but we are slowly moving forward. And the housing action plan was really good to see that, we actually 34 dwellings in total at Grafton and 29 state housing dwellings at big sites, which don't always get out there, but it's actually a really good outcome. So I'm really happy to receive and note this report, and I can't wait for the public to be able to listen.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, I'm very happy with it, very happy with the explanations why things are ahead or why things are behind. We're never going to get 100% being on time, so it's good to have those explanations where things aren't going. Thank you for that.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Milner to close.
Just to further with Councillor Stewart about where we're not hitting plans. As a mother, a plan lasts as long as your last sentence that comes out of your mouth and it changes. Having those explanations and having that fluidity through actually getting more knowledge as you go through is something I'm really liking about this. And it's that openness are working through some, and we do have some highlights there as well. So it's not a failure when we don't hit the operational plan. It's actually, I'm thinking we're getting wins because we're actually developing and improving our way through. So some of them have been pushed out to get a better outcome. So, thank you.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.5, Audit and Risk Committee update.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor, the Audit and Risk Committee update has been provided by the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. Audit and Risk Committee provide oversight of governance arrangements and all that occurs within Council. And the report is provided, and I'll take it as read. Are there any questions?
Questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, it raises concerns about the length of time between fulfilling vacancies, and just some response to that, 9.1. So from advertised position to appoint, so from when the position is advertised, appointment should be 7 days, vacancies even longer than that. I'm just wondering what's being done to, is it actually an issue, and if it is, what's being done to address it?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to respond to that. We are working on our time to fill. Often it's pretty hard to get people to start within a much shorter period. We've talked about that in a couple of workshops here with yourselves around the talent and management strategy. Our goal would probably be to get it round to around 40 days, I think, is our best case scenario, because most of our jobs are advertised for 10. We take about 10 days to get a panel and get someone in, so that's 20. Then someone usually has 10 or 20 days to give notice at their current employer. So that's probably our best case scenario. But we do build in a vacancy management target to our budget as well, so we do leave positions vacant for a period of time. Notwithstanding that, we recognise the pressure that puts on teams when there's fewer staff within the team. So that's why it's a safety matter. That's why it's recorded in that part of the audit report. So We've talked about the recruitment team and their actions, and one of their key actions is to move managers along in regards to hiring. So don't dawdle on the panel, get people in, good respectful sort of behaviour as an organisation. And I know we've talked here at the council meeting regarding providing feedback to unsuccessful people too. That's just as important to us, to let them know that they may not have been successful in the role, give them feedback if they're required.
Any other questions, Councillor Stewart? Other questions, councillors? So that was a bit of a statement and then a question. One of my frustrations with the Audit and Risk Committee is their gross failure last term. And, you know, we had an organisation that was getting all the green ticks, all the gold stars, everything was hunky-dory, and yet we were hemorrhaging financially. And it would appear that the information that was being presented to these, you know, councillors and the community and the audit risk was second-hand at best. Now that we have an organisation that has had strict instructions from the elected representatives that honesty is the foundation of what we do, I struggle to understand why the audit risk continually seem to want to kick people that are being honest in the shins, when in the past, when they were being dishonest, they got a green tick or a gold star. I've raised it with the committee, and I think that honesty is the most important part of our organisation, and there is no recognition from the audit and risk of how far this organisation has come. If you look at waste, finance, road maintenance and other projects that this council did last term, that this organisation did last term, and went through that, you would just find misleading or dishonest statement after misleading or dishonest statement. And there was nothing, there was not a boo out of the audit and risk. You know, is the audit and risk, or do they have the ability or capability to actually recognise the shift that this organisation has taken towards honesty and assist in improving their culture by supporting that and rewarding that with even one positive comment around the honesty that the elected representatives demand of our organisation?
Look, I should probably speak to that one through yourself, to yourself, Mayor. Look, I probably won't comment on the audit committee. I haven't been here long enough, but I do feel that the narrative that you're explaining to us is something that we need to convince the audit committee of. So, as officers, we can do that, and with Mr. Sheehan and the work he's doing in the space of recruitment, we're improving all the time. So, our hope is that we can impress them with what we're doing and turn them around. I can't address your comments directly, but we can certainly work on what we can do there.
Well, I think if we impressed them last term, and my statements in my discussions with the audit office representatives are, we are better off lying to you, because as an organisation, when we lie to you, we get all these green ticks and gold stars. But that doesn't sit with me personally or the elected representatives as an appropriate way. These people missed all the red flags last term, and I was a councillor that approached the audit and risk committee about my concerns, particularly one project, but they missed them hands down, even though there was plenty of information within the public domain, and should have been plenty of information within the council domain that there were issues, but there was crickets. Now that we have an honest organisation with elected representatives that demand that as one of our core foundational principles, the audit office and the audit and risk committee seem to take joy in slapping us whenever possible. And from an outside looking in, and particularly for the staff, I just go, well, if you look at the 4 years before, we were green ticks, gold stars, and now we get beaten around on everything. And it doesn't support the change in culture that these people allegedly highlight as a risk. They are part of the change in culture process, and they should recognise that. And they should give credit where credit is due. And this organisation has come a hell of a long way from where we were at the start of 2020 to where we are now. And not once have I seen the Audit and Risk Committee give recognition to the wonderful work of staff and the wonderful principles that the elected representatives have demanded of the organisation. And again, I ask, is there any possibility, do they have it in their capability to recognise that massive change and acknowledge the good work of staff and elected representatives? So maybe that could be taken back to them for a response. Because
That's true, Mr Mayor, we can note that, we can actually, something on that.
Yeah.
So review the,
And through you.
review the membership.
Through you, Mr Mayor, as a person who presents at the Audit and Risk Committee, I actually see it as a committee that asks you to do your best in your job, whether it's in IT, finance, planning. So they put you on notice about how your work's going, what difference is it making. So when they highlight things that we've talked about, I don't take it as a criticism, we take it as how we can do better. And actually the two independents as well as the councillors on there are pretty experienced in local government. They've given us some suggested areas to work on, particularly in safety and other areas. So it's been quite good feedback for them. But agree there's not too many compliments. There's more brickbats than roses that come forward.
Sounds like the floggings will continue until morale improves, and I just feel that, you know, there has been a huge change and it should be recognised, and it would be great for the Audit and Risk Committee, who, in my opinion, failed dismally from 16 to 20. And it's the elected representatives that set the tone for this term, and the organisation has followed suit, and I think we are in complete opposite to where we were. Councillor Deborah.
Thank you. Mayor, I can address some of that at least, which is, as you know, there have been some changes within the Audit and Risk Committee with the people that are sitting around the table and where they sit and so forth. What you're saying about your disappointment originally, as I'm sitting at the table and Councillor Fredman and myself, it was made known to them about those disappointments early on. There has been a real change, I think, in what's being put up, questions, the way it's all being handled. I've been really pleased with it. I'm seeing them digging into stuff, which is their job. Certainly they're better at it than what I am. The one thing I would say is that the job of the Audit and Risk Committee is to find where the risks are and advise council that this is a problem. And the risks change all the time. So even though we may have sorted out some stuff that was there at the beginning, there's new stuff coming through all the time, and they're bringing it to the table, which is a huge advantage for the group. It's a real service that they're doing. I know that some of them have been paid, but I personally have seen a real change within that room, and I'm very happy with it. So I will say that in their defence, that that's their job, to point out the risks. Yeah. I know what you're saying, it'd be nice to have something nice, but they are doing the main part of their job.
I think in anything there needs to be balance, and I certainly think that they are an important part of the process. We have seen the worst of the failure of Audit and Risk, and I'm glad that they're digging in. I'm glad that they are looking at our organisation and making sure that the green ticks that we get are actually genuine, not just a bit of text to the board. But however, we're all dealing with human beings, and particularly for those staff that went through that 16 to 20 period and, saw a lot of what the organisation was doing and it didn't sit with their personal values. It would be good for them and good for morale and the culture to acknowledge that, and and for the community to be presented with some independent information that, look, the organisation is not where it was. The foundational principles have changed, and you can have some comfort that we're getting the information. I think that's an important role of the Audit and Risk as well, to be balanced. Yes, deep as you need to get the information so you can be satisfied, but also give credit to the people that, you know, have stood the test of time and done a good job. Councillor Fredman?
Mr Mayor, I take note of the message you're giving. I'd just like to put it into a bit of perspective because I am a member of the committee. The committee is primarily made up of accountants and auditors.
So are you suggesting they're not human beings?
I'm just resting my case. The two other things I'd like to add, because you obviously got the message from my first point. The second point is that there has been a change in the leadership, and of course every time there's a change in the leadership of any committee, I think it's noteworthy that things are going in a different direction. So coupled with my first point is my second point, that the leadership is taking in a different direction. The third point I'd like to add is that when you read the report, and I'm sure, Mr Mayor, you're diligent and you read the report, the committee noted the importance of improved leadership to enable culture of the organisation to improve. That's a profound statement, and it's there. The committee noted the importance of improved leadership, and we were talking about it earlier today. I think within the limitations of what the members of the committee can do, and within the limitations of what they're told, I think that's a very positive statement to come our way. And I will be delighted in due course to move that we accept this report, because it's all there in one sentence.
Are you suggesting that we've got blood out of a stone, Mr President? Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Fredman to move, someone to second. Councillor Mill, Councillor Fredman speak.
I think I've said enough, Mr Mayor. I wrote those 3 points a minute ago. I'd just like to add that legally we have to have an audit committee. Legally it has to be made up of accountants and auditors. And also legally the state government auditors have an awful lot of power. Regardless of what angle they come from and regardless of what they see and don't see, regardless of how practical they may be, they've got an awful lot of power. So we have to accept the committee, and I'm sure now each member of the committee is doing their best. So I'm very happy to move this motion.
Councillor Mill.
I appreciate the comments made by Councillor Fredman, and when reading the report in entirety, I found there was no issues raised, because for me it looked like that the Audit and Risk Committee were doing their job, they were asking the right questions, and they were moving our organisation forward. I always say that improvement doesn't come from praise, it comes from not criticism but constructive improvement suggestions or thought processes at how can you do things better. So what I'm seeing here is they actually are doing that, and it looks like staff are appreciating that feedback and actually growing our organisation. So I don't need to see praises, I like to see that we're making progress. This report does do that, and I think they're doing their job, and I'm happy to have that we resolve to receive it. And the CEO will do any actions suggested. Thank you.
2 speakers for the recommendations. Any speakers against? The other speakers for. Councillor Fredman to close.
Nothing to add, Mr Mayor.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.6, October Finance Report. You, Mr Chair, again? Yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll take the report as read and probably have to take any questions on notice. I've been advised by my colleagues. I'm going to comment on our financial position, but from what is provided in the report, things are on track. But happy to take any questions through you, Mr Mayor, or the councillors.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart?
Mr Mayor, I did check with Manager Deb Hatherall about one item on page 36, the salary and wages. You should have a brackets around the number. So the higher wages, higher salary and wages means that it's a negative variance. It's probably actually a good thing because it means that we are having the staff that we need to do what we need to do in the organisation.
Councillor Devereux?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, my take on that was slightly different. I didn't understand, because I thought that where we've got vacancies and so forth, we actually, I'm sure, asked, it was in the budget to allow for that. So I was really surprised to see that figure blown out so much. So I was after an explanation about that, but on notice is fine.
Yeah, if I may, thank you.
There is an explanation there. There is higher than anticipated overtime costs with water and sewage.
Yeah, as a percentage though, that's...
Yeah, I think the water and sewage guys would be happy if they were getting slots.
Yeah, that's... Sign me up.
So can you just have that on notice?
Yeah.
Councillor Miller?
I'm just clarifying the question there. It's not that it's not against the budget, it's just against that month's forecast budget, not the total budget. I'm just clarifying that
could
position.
have been unexpected labour costs in that particular time.
Yeah.
That relate to IR matters and other things, so that could increase our projected wages for that particular month.
Well, just on that, I did notice, sorry, through the Mayor, if I could, that the forecast remained the same. So again, that's all part of what I'd like to have explained. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second? Councillor Smoothen, Councillor Stewart to speak.
Mr Mayor, we have a bigger than expected surplus, and even though our wages bill is a bit more than expected, and that's partly so because we've got more plumbing inspectors to do that plumbing stuff that we mentioned about 2 items ago, that sort of thing. The expenses are down on expected. Though more money is going to road maintenance, that's a good thing. So there's some pluses and minuses there, but generally speaking, we're on track, and we're on track for capital expenditure, which is a good thing because normally we are behind.
Councillor Smoothen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's good to see that on the whole, council seems to be travelling fairly well financially. It's good to see that we've got most of our reaper packages now sorted and out for contract, and that work will be done soon. That's really good to see. I know there are a lot of people out west that are still waiting to see some action on their roads, so hopefully they won't be too far away. So on the whole, it's good news story.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.7, procurement panel.
Through Mr Mayor, I might ask Graham to come down, please. A couple of matters for the infrastructure department. So the Mr Mayor is presenting the report on the procurement panel and recommendations on behalf of we don't have a procurement officer any longer. He's left council. We're in the process of recruiting to that role. First item is the Jones Hill Reservoir. If there's any questions or discussion.
Any questions, councillors, on the report? Councillor Frederick.
Just a question, is this new reservoir going to assist with water pressures in Lindsay Street?
Through yourself, Mr Mayor, most likely not.
Have you thought about putting a few metres on and solving the problem?
Well, we've got to store how many megalitres?
Through yourself, Mr Mayor, there's probably a number of changes we'd like to make retrospectively, but probably to answer the specific question with regards to the pressure issues, we are actually addressing those as a separate project, a separate issue. It's an immediate responses to actually resolve it. But I note your comment, Councillor.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a number of recommendations there. We'll begin with recommendation 1. Is there someone to move? Councillor Fredman, someone to second. Councillor Smurden and Councillor Fredman speak.
We need the reservoir, we need it badly, and let's get on with it.
Councillor Smurden.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Echo Councillor Fredman's sentiments. The one we've got at the moment isn't doing a great job of holding water from what I've been told, so the sooner we get a new one, the better.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Now the 4. Councillor Fredman to close.
It's like a bit of useless information. Mr Mayor, the site for the new reservoir, I think, was levelled in preparation for this about 25 years ago.
You don't want to rush things.
I don't know whether that assists in the debate, but what foresight council staff had.
And would you be laying claim to some of that foresight? With that, we'll go to the vote. Councillors, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 2. Someone to move?
Oh.
Roche, Councillor Mill. Someone to second. Councillor Stewart. Councillor Mill to speak.
Oh, we need to get in, I think this is when we get into buildings, so.
It's for
Yeah, we need to get in and out of buildings. And I believe this system's actually going to upgrade the capability and data collect that we have for it and a security for especially remote facilities and the staff accessing them. So yeah, happy to have this going through.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, it should make things more efficient, not need so many keys being lost one place to another, so that's a good thing. So yeah, I'm happy to move. Happy to second the meeting.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Mill to close.
I move the vote.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 3.
Can I ask a question on that one, now that we're looking at it?
On
3.
Yes.
Just because I noticed when you went through the whole process, you got all these people, you evaluated them, they all come in at, 1 to 8, they've all got different scorings, and yet you're all accepting them on the panel, which is fine. Does that mean you're going to call number 1 first and he's not busy, you call number 2, or, if somebody scored lowly on the panel, do they still get a bite at the cherry, even though they didn't rate as good as the other people? I just wasn't quite sure, like we're approving people.
I have notes on it, but we will do. Thanks, through yourself, Mr Mayor. Look, it's a very good point, Councillor, and it's actually something that I've actually had a look at myself in detail, and from our perspective for panel suppliers, in reality, it actually doesn't matter what rating they are, more of a compliance-based aspect. Can they deliver a service, etc. What the rating does incorporate is a pricing element as well. So to deliver best value for money, what we would be inclined to do is to actually go to the highest scored supplier first and actually progressively work through the list.
Right. So they could actually fail below a certain point, you're not even going to be on the panel if they were that bad, didn't score. Right?
That's correct, Councillor, and that would then be noted in the report to say, look, we had actually these suppliers that did not actually make the cut.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Councillor Stewart.
To me, just to follow up on that, I think in part the price was based on one product, like if I remember right. But these different groups will provide different products anyway at different costs. So I guess the question is around: do we try and get value for money by getting the best product at the best price from the appropriate company, rather than just? Do staff think about where's the best place to get it economically and efficiently, rather than just whoever was on top of the list?
Yeah, it's through yourself, Mr Mayor. The ranking is actually not a definitive tool, if you like, to know first to last. There are different products that different suppliers can provide more economically, and they're specialised in specific products. So what the council officers do is actually evaluate the actual product and supply required, the proximity to where the supply is actually required to be delivered, for example, which will then impact on cost. So those elements are considered through the whole process. It's not, and what we do encourage is, regardless of whether people are on a panel, we're appropriate. We do actually see multiple plots for supply as well to ensure that value for money.
Any other questions, councillors, before we move on with recommendation 3? No? Great, okay. We'll deal with recommendation 3. Is there someone to move? Councillor Polly, someone to second. Councillor Fredman. Councillor Polly to speak.
No, based on the responses I get and the information, I'm very glad to see that we have a lot of local companies on this panel, so happy to move recommendation 3.
Councillor Fredman.
Mr Mayor, our need for, no doubt, quarry products and landscape products, at times it can be planned and other times you've got an hour, I suspect, to get something because of a change in circumstance. So this panel of suppliers, all being local, as Councillor Polly said, they're all well-known and respected Gympie names. It's very good that we've got our shop in order and we can move forward without raising any questions from the Audit Committee.
Perhaps praise.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Polly to close.
Nothing further to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 4 for LGMA. Is there someone to move?
Firstly, can I actually ask what this is actually for? Sorry, because it's about management, whatever, and I'm not too sure.
I'll be happy to respond through you.
It is, yeah, item section 2.4 of the report.
So the LGMA has recently come off vendor panel. Probably not a great decision for a company that supports local governments in Queensland. So as a result, we probably see this motion on quite a number of councils' agendas where they want to identify a sole supplier. So we spend, as the report says, between 20 and 50,000 with them on various programs that they offer. Probably the one we get involved most is the Propeller for young people's career path and the NIGHT program, which is sort of a leadership management challenge. So to have them nominated, we have to come back through council to have them identified as a sole supplier. So we can, similar to panels, we might go to quote, but we can also deal direct with them because they are the only provider of some of these programs that we like to participate in.
So they help improve the leadership skills and other skills of staff?
Yes, and they provide us with a number of, they have a conference once a year where they get speakers that are quite relevant to what's going on in local government, and the staff who participate get a lot of benefit from it in terms of networking, career opportunities, development materials, things like that. They're a good organisation, like LGAQ, they support us in a number of endeavours.
Any other questions, councillors, before we move on with the recommendation? Councillor Polly.
Oh, yeah, he said, in the report says anticipated annual spend, so we already are spending it, or is it in next year's budget that we'll spend it?
We're probably not spending much more with them this financial year. It depends when the programs start. Usually the Propeller and Ignite start in June or July next year. So we have travel costs and other things associated with plus registration, and then we usually provide 4 spots at their conference each year. So that's generally our spend with them. It'd probably be more in the midway between that spend, not at the high end of that.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Devereux, Councillor Stewart second. Councillor Devereux to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. It's always a good idea to self-improvement, to improve staff, to give them the opportunity to learn more, bring it back to the organisation. I don't pretend to know much more than Councillor Stewart on what it is, but I will take it as read that it's important. I did think it was odd that it was the bracket was 20 to 50,000, so that's a big difference there. But I guess it means how many people want to actually participate. So yeah, happy to recommend this.
Councillor Stewart.
Mayor, over the years, over the last few years, particularly been big concerns about staff morale and such like. And an important part of having a good culture in your workplace is making sure there's training and career pathways. And I can see this is an important aspect of that. So I'm happy to second.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Is there any speakers against? The other speakers for. Councillor Devereux to close.
Nothing more to add, thank you.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 6.8, post-market sewer pump station. Highlight.
Go to the engineer. Thanks. Through yourself, Mr Mayor. I'll take this report as largely read, but however, what I will do is highlight a couple of aspects and a couple of obvious aspects, I suppose. Initially, the project, so this is for one of our major sewage pump stations. It's the major pump station, which is down near the central shopping centre, the one that sticks out like a very smelly sore thumb. The original budget for the project was $1.8 million. What we are now talking about is a budget of $3.75 million, a significant increase. I just wanted to talk through the reasons for the budget increase because it is significant. Firstly, the original budget had the project located basically at the same location as where the existing site is. What we did is actually reviewed the whole locality and said, okay, look, it's best to actually try and shift this pump station across the road. Get it away from right in front of the major shopping centre, get it away from the major highway intersection. So the site selected basically also incorporates some tighter construction restraints, if you like, from a site construction perspective. That led to a price increase. The actual site selection is a lot better location. It is the best suited locality for this particular pump station upgrade. What it also incorporates is actually some under road directional drilling, which is then required. So again, a slight increase in budget. We've also allowed for an increase in contingency to allow for that more constrained site to deal with any latent condition that potentially occurs through the construction process. But the key element for the price increase is the escalation in market. What we have actually been seeing is prices go from an increase of 150 to 200+% on what was originally budgeted, say, 12 months ago. So that is probably the key element and reason for the price escalation, the budget escalation. I'll just close off, councillors, and just simply say that the project management framework that we're actually implementing will actually capture these budget escalations earlier in the piece, which will then come back to yourselves through that workshop process which we've actually introduced. So that will then actually provide earlier on transparency for yourselves in relation to where the projects are moving from the budget. So that's where we're at. This is actually a bit of a legacy issue from a budget point of view, but the reasons are entirely valid.
Councillor Smith.
So what we'll end up with is a similar design to the recent upgrades of the other pump stations?
Councillor, if I can actually defer to our technical representative, Peter Manning, who's...
You're throwing it to the crowd.
Throw the answer.
Sorry, so through you, Mr Mayor, yes, it's making G3 down there the same as G1 to 4, rather than an above ground structure, it's underground wet well structure. This one will actually have a little bit more odour control on it than the other stations, just because of proximity to the issues we've been trying to resolve with.
Yeah, we have had some other issues there. Will that address those issues that we've had?
Fox Street.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. So we put a little bit more odour control on it, and there's probably a couple of other issues that have helped resolve that one at Fox Street as well.
That's good.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, just so the location sit more towards Fox Street?
Yes. So if you sort of shopping centre, the highway, the roundabout. It's on the diagonally opposite, close to the
So I do know that from another report, some of the houses in Fox Street being bought up for the flood buyback, but nevertheless, so have those residents been consulted or it's been explained to them or whatever?
So I guess, yes, from the previous question, that is one of the property that was a complainant is one of the buyback properties. So yes, there had been consultation, but one of those people is not there anymore.
If I can, through yourself, Mr Mayor, just to add to that comment as well, what we will be doing is, once this is actually endorsed by council to proceed, we will actually communicate directly with the residents, especially in the vicinity, to advise them exactly what the project is, what the benefits are, etc., so that everyone will be fully informed.
Yes, through there. We had done some initial consultation, but once we're on boots on the ground, we'll go out again.
Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, love what you're saying about it not being in the same spot. As you were saying it, I've just written down, will there be scope to improve the traffic where it is? So I guess there will be once this is done. Is it higher or lower than the current one in terms of, I'm concerned about flooding and how soon it would flood, so.
Through...
Yeah, it is.
Much the same level.
Yep.
Basically because the system gravitates down to our low points, which is where the pump stations are. So the pump station itself is probably at the same level. The access that we'd use to be pulling out the switchboard like we do now, rather than up through the shopping centre car park, would be
Yeah, that's...
not JC Way.
So I think there were some issues.
Centro Way.
I think there were some issues with when we had a flood, with the flood waters getting in and so forth. That they've all been sorted, have they? Going forward?
Yes. So a design change we've made since February's flood is for these big pump stations. There's a new detail, essentially sealing the cable. We'll still be leaving the pumps in the well like we did previously, but there's a new sealant detail that should stop the water getting down.
And you're confident?
Yes, because the idea is that the little bit at the top, we just cut that off, the rest of it's dry, repot it, and it's...
Pot it? Was that a... Thanks.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Collins?
Corollary to this then, the old side, any thought given to, what being reinstated to, like room for a motorhome or a caravan, because it's always dramas with, not for overnighting, but just to park.
I guess we're still going through the process. We've been working with Centro, and the site that it's on at the moment is actually state reserve for us. The site on the other side was actually, I'm saying Centro, but the owner of the shopping centre, that was their land, and we're working through that a land swap, for want of a better term. That's probably another paper that's going to be coming to you in another month. But we've been working with the owners of the shopping centre for probably 2 years now to work through that process of why we are where we are. And probably in the phase-in, we would have rather done this one before G1, which is the one we've done, but that process of the changing the site and just, that's the bit that takes the time rather than the design.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart?
Following on, Councillor Holly, I was thinking in terms of trees and whatever there, not car park, but anyway.
The thought was, it will probably be handed over landscaped in some way.
There's no other questions, councillors. We have a recommendation there before us. There's Councillor Smurden to move, Councillor Devereux to second. Councillor Smurden to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is another step forward in a department which has been grossly neglected in the last 10, 15, 20 years. So every improvement in this department is a giant step forward as far as I'm concerned, and it's good to see.
Councillor Devereux?
I'll reiterate what Councillor Smurden said. This is something that was desperately needed. It's expensive It was expensive before the price rise, but, you know, the benefits to the region, to town in particular, far outweigh what we're having to put into it, so crack on.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Smith, closed.
It's a step forward in health and safety as far as I'm concerned for the entire community, so it's good to see and I'm happy to move.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We might adjourn for a short 15-20 minute break. 6.9, the amendment to schedule fees and charges. I'll hand over to Mr. O'Byrne, Mr. Chairman again.
Thanks. Mr. O'Byrne's going to respond as this one relates to water matters and the standpoint.
Thanks, Chair. Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, so this report is specifically about introducing or amending fees and charges related to standpipes at the water fill points. I will just preface the whole report with a little bit of background as far as the standpipes themselves are concerned, and on the back of probably some questions that some councillors have actually asked me this morning. So, as you're well aware, we've been reviewing the whole geography and the locality of points where water is taken and available both from a public consumption point of view as well as actually the commercial water carters. In that review, what we're doing is we're finalising some permanent locations which will be nominated for the commercial carters. What we've found is that the localities at the moment are impacting significantly on our ability to provide water at an appropriate pressure to certain localities within the region. And also what we're looking to do is actually ensure that the localities for those, especially those commercial carters, are at points which have the least disruption possible to both residents as well as other businesses. So making sure that turnaround points and the parking where trucks park, noise created, etc., has a reduced impact or minimal impact to adjacent businesses and, as I said, residents. What we're also introducing is actually, and this now relates directly to this particular report, is we're actually introducing nominated points where water carters can actually take water from hydrant locations. And those locations will actually ensure, be at localities where, again, turnaround and parking is not an issue, disruption to businesses is not an issue. In order to actually facilitate that, what we're doing is actually making available some standpipes. Those standpipes will actually have GPS cards in them, so we'll actually be able to map exactly where they're at and actually then charge in accordance, so we'll also meter the water taken, so that will actually be able to provide us that that assurance that we're actually able to charge for the water taken. So that's all contained within these new standpipes. What we're actually, in this report, we have actually nominated a higher rate for a standpipe, a per month higher rate. So if actually a water carter, for example, or a contracting business wants to actually and needs to take water, they can actually come in, obtain a standpipe from us. It's at a monthly hire fee, but also what we're recommending is that there's actually a bond paid. I will note, councillors, that the bond amount in the report is nominated at $1,700. We have actually reviewed that, and in recent, just over the last few days, and what we're actually proposing is that bond is actually $200, not $1,700. The cost of the standpipes is around about $1,700. So essentially we're saying provide us a bond, and that bond will cover the full replacement. But that bond potentially, especially for a water card, could be there for 5-10 years. So we believe the 200 bond is more appropriate, which will then cover essentially the administrative cost, etc., of the providing the standpipe. But what we'll also be doing is actually requiring those people that do take a standpipe to sign an agreement which basically says if they lose the standpipe or if they damage it and it actually needs to be replaced, they will actually be, one, they'll forfeit their bond, but also two, they will actually be encumbered with the cost of that replacement for the standpipe. So that will be covered in the agreement that is signed off. So in summary, councillors, what we're actually recommending is that the fees and charges are accepted with the actual change being the $1,700 bond is actually amended to be $200.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Smead?
This has been an ongoing problem, accentuated by the recent dry weather, because as far as I'm concerned, the water carriers do an essential service for all our rural residents. And having to go to the water points that they're going to at the moment and being held up by people with pods makes it very hard for them to have an ongoing flow of water out to the residents, rural residents. If they've got more than one truck, can they get more than one standpipe?
Sure.
And hydrant?
Yes.
Because I know that some operators have got 5, 6 trucks, and just to try and organise how they get it from one truck to the other would be a rather difficult problem, I would think. So we're going to guarantee high pressure at these hydrants, or because I know.
Yep.
Another thing that they have brought up with me is that how long it takes to actually fill with a hydrant compared to a standpipe, and in some cases it takes twice as long or whatever. You know. So if we can guarantee that pressure at those hydrant points, that would be good.
So to answer your question, Councillor, through yourself, Mr Mayor, what we've been doing is doing trials with a number of water carriers to address that specific issue. Is because there are definitely some localities where it takes 2 or 3 times as long to fill because of the reduced pressure and reduced flow. So what we're doing is ensuring that the localities that we nominate, and we'll actually provide a map to the water carriers which will show those localities. The tests we've actually undertaken have meant that the filling time increases by about 4 or 5 minutes. And it's been agreed between the people that have done the test and ourselves that that's an appropriate additional time, if you like, with the convenience that there's now a number of localities that they can actually take water.
Some of our carriers actually have their own standpipes that they've purchased in years gone by with an agreement with council. Are they going to be on the same system, or?
Councillor, I'll take that on notice, with the preface being that my view is that yes, they would actually be on exactly the same system. We need some consistency in relation to how we actually track and monitor the water taken, and this new approach would actually allow that to happen. But I think the best way to do it is to address that on a case-by-case basis. If a particular business has an old standpipe, if it satisfies us as far as those commercial-based requirements, then we'd most likely allow it. But the default position would be no, would say the new downpipe sort of one is the way to go.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Jensen?
The 108 per month, is there a minimum, or do they just pay that on a month-by-month basis, or do they say, we'll sign up for 3 months, 6 months?
Yeah, so that purely is a month-by-month.
Cool, done.
Any other questions? Councillor Mel?
Mr Mayor, it does say here that it's the GPS will track what's coming out and the water's coming out of the ground. So where does that actually go back to, and how does it get charged through? I mean, that's a bit of a technical question, but it's about accountability and how do we actually know? I mean, we can give them these things, and if it fails, I mean, I'm not sure, are we protecting our sales?
Councillor, if I could defer to Sky Hughes, who potentially can answer that question for us.
The wholesaler that supplies the standpipes also supplies us with a computer system, so it runs straight into the system and we can look it up at any time, real time.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Smurden, someone to second. Councillor Wardock, Councillor Smurden to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I've said, this has been an ongoing problem that's reared its head a lot in the last few months. I'm hoping that this solution will work and will keep our water carriers at full production. If it does, I'm very happy to move. Thank you.
Councillor Wardock.
No, nothing more to add. Thank you.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Smurden to close.
Happy to move.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Q. Thank you, gentlemen. Section 7, Community Sustainability. Parker's first meeting as acting director, so go hard, councillor. No, It's great to have you in this role for however long you need.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Mr Mayor, councillors, this first report, you would remember we brought a report to council workshop about the properties at Kilkeeman that council owns freehold. There is an external proponent investigating options to put in ageing in place accommodation on those particular lots. I'm joined by Ms Stark here to assist with any questions in and around the report. The resolution that we're seeking today is an in-principle agreement from council to support investigation of those lots for that particular purpose. And the second resolution is those lots around a Catholic church property, and that's to enable the Chief Executive Officer potentially to delegate or at least to inquire with the owners of that property about what their future plans may be for that particular property.
Is there anything else you wish to add, Mr Stark?
Through you, Mr Mayor, essentially what's before council today is the decision before council at this stage as to whether to provide in principle commitment to set aside the vacant lots in Church Street in Kilkeevan for the purposes of ageing in place initiatives, noting that any future lease or transfer of the property would be subject to a future council resolution with relevant conditions outlined at that time. I do note, councillors, that this has been very much a community-driven initiative which is looking to provide ageing in place initiatives in the western area of our region. The report does outline the occasions on which this has been brought to council in the past, including a petition back in 2020. We do note that the Ageing in Place report and the Local Housing Action Plan also have relevance to this matter. Essentially, as we've noted, Mr Mayor, that we are just looking for that in-principle support to set aside the lots in Kilkeevan for ageing in place initiatives. And secondly, as the Acting Director outlined, an instruction to the Chief Executive Officer to have a chat with the adjacent landowners about their future intentions for this.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Mill?
I understand. I just clarifying that this is for a funding application and funding the body that's administering the process of this application. This recommendation satisfies what they require for this next stage.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the recommendation before council is a somewhat general recommendation, and the purpose of that recommendation is to enable, I guess, to make a public commitment that these two lots at this stage are set aside for ageing in place initiatives. Through you, Mr Mayor, there is one proponent at the moment who does have an application before a funding body. Should that be successful, they would then need to seek formal tenure through council to support that application. If that application is not successful, there is still a public commitment so that other proponents can start to leverage funds or do project planning for different types of initiatives on that site.
And this recommendation satisfies that general requirement under any funding rounds?
Through you, Mr Mayor, this is an in-principle commitment to set land aside. Any development in the future would require a clearer level of tenure, such as an agreement to lease or lease, and that would be sorted at that time and brought to council at that time.
But this is in that step process. This would satisfy a stepped process, not a full application.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's the answer I should have said. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? We have two recommendations there. Councillor Smerd to move in relation to that recommendation one. Someone to second. Councillor Mill, Councillor Smerd to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is to formally resolve what we thought was already been resolved by council many moons ago. Back in, I think we started talking about this in the previous council. But yeah, it's well supported by the residents of Kilkeevan. I think it's well needed by the residents of Kilkeevan, and hopefully this will help them with any grants that they go for. So I'm happy to move.
Councillor Mill.
Knowing that there are bodies of funding out there to support this accommodation gaps that we do have in our community, it's good that we can put something like this in place that does reserve an opportunity for funding or community-led solutions to actually take place. So I'm happy to have this be adopted by council as an in-principle support to allow that to happen.
The two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Smerd to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to wish the residents of Kilkiewan all the best as far as their grant application goes, and hopefully we might be back here soon talking about a form of the grant. Thank you.
So we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. In relation to recommendation 2. Let's drag on. Someone to move? Councillor Milne. Someone to second? Councillor Smurden. Councillor Milne to speak.
This lot does sit in between the other lots, so it makes sense to have an investigation into the future of this lot to make the whole area there more functional if there is something to go into its place. So I'm happy for him to go and investigate.
Councillor Smurden.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. They had their last service there at this church about a month ago, I think. And now we sit there down. It squares up the block, makes it more usable. I hope the Catholic Church doesn't get too hungry when they decide to do something with it. But yeah, it's good to see that the CEO will investigate them.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? The other speakers for? Just like to acknowledge the work that staff have done in relation to this whole project. There has been a lot of time and a lot of effort put into something that isn't traditionally local government. And I know you yourself, Ms. Stark, have really driven that cause. And just also acknowledge the great work in the extra reclassification of the equestrian centre and the pro forma sheets and the opportunities that are available there to assist that facility for different events. It's really pleasing to see that those things are being moved forward at a good pace. Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? We will now go to the councillors.
I'd just like to echo the Mayor's sentiments on that. You have done a great job lately, Ms Stark, and congratulations on the equestrian centre. That was well overdue and shouldn't have been a problem at the start. Find that out now and everything's good. Thank you.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now you can run. Item 7.2, the individual council biosecurity plan. Mr. Parker, Ms. Nathan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors. I'm joined by Alex Stengel today to present this report. It's about council endorsing the Gympie Regional Council biosecurity plan and the companion to the plan. It's important to note that the plan, identifies risk identification and management, and the companion to the plan then outlines the process for determining biosecurity risk priorities for the Gympie region. The plan and companion have both been have both undergone public consultation that occurred in August through to September. We've got actually an apology to make in relation to the attachment that was placed with the agenda. We've identified that there were a few grammatical and formatting errors in the attachment. In the agenda, we provided you a copy of those rectified today. They're on the table for you. And I'll hand over to Alex to add anything further.
Through the chair, look, I don't think I have much to add. Anything's nailed it. If there's any questions with councillors today, I just wanted to inform you we received 10 submissions. We've reactivated the Biosecurity Action Group, the acronym BAG, and that's been really helpful. And that committee's group is continuing. They've provided feedback. We got feedback from DAF regarding those two documents, which was positive. But yeah, if there's any questions today, I'm happy to answer it.
I guess the success is in the bag.
Oh dear.
Any comments or questions, councillors? Just the reactivation of the Weeds and Pests Committee as well is an important part for our landholders right around the region, so it's great to see that is back up and functioning well. We have a recommendation here, councillors. Councillor Smurden to move, someone to second. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Smurden to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is one of the hardest departments that the council has, I think, to try and do something with weeds and pests and that sort of thing. And there's just so many of them, and they seem to multiply every day.
You still are.
Having enough staff to actually do anything it's very hard. We have a staff ceiling, doesn't really go anywhere near what we need, but that's what we've got to put up with. With the staff we have got doing a fairly good job, I think. So, but yeah, it's most of the pests we've got have come from overseas and been introduced, but that's the thing we've got to live with at the moment. So most of them are garden ornamentals and that sort of thing, and now they are now pests. So yeah, it's something we have to do and something we have to try and have something to cover for. So yeah, it's good to have this back. And it's also the biosecurity committee now, not the weeds and pests.
Start off the old days. Bit nostalgic. Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, I've had constituents who are almost crying about neighbours who aren't looking after the land properly. And I think one of the issues we've had in the past is how we enforce our biosecurity issues. So I think this new plan and companion will help our staff in better enforcing biosecurity concerns across the region. It is when you see people who aren't caring for the land, and you see rat's tail, whatever is growing wherever, it is really disappointing. And so hopefully this will help address that, help people be more responsible.
Who speakers for the recommendation? Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Milne.
Biosecurity is everybody's responsibility, and I believe that having these two documents that are easy to digest and read will assist in educating the community. It's also a good explanation on, we can keep chasing things that are already here, and we have to accept the mitigation on their impact, like Giant's rat tail, or do we put funding into something like fire ants, which aren't here yet, but if they do get here, it's going to be an absolutely massive impact. So it starts getting that understanding that some things we'd love to be able to get rid of, but we can keep throwing buckets of money at it, but it's not going to make a difference. So we need to manage those invasions. But then there's also other ones that we probably should be concentrating on before they do actually get out of control. So let's move forward, and I look forward to seeing staff what they can do with it and working with the public.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Smedley, close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think the biggest message we need to put out there is it's up to the landholder to actually look after their own land, not for council to go out with a big stick. I still can't believe or understand how someone can buy land and actually watch it go backwards with noxious weeds overtaking it. Some of the areas around out western that are just pure rat tail these days, and how they can justify doing that, I don't know. But I think one of the roles that council can fill is education, and have more and more field days, that sort of thing, to try and educate people on the necessary ways to control noxious weeds and that sort of thing. So that's, I think, council's role in these days. Yeah. Happy to move.
With that, we will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.3, waste fee and charges. Michael Stengel.
I invite Alex to remain here. This is a seeking council resolution to introduce a new fee to our fees and charges. It's in relation to a category of material known as mixed earth material. We present to the Bonnie Grove Waste Facility. Basically, that's contaminated soil remediation that has undergone successful treatment. Throughout the year, we identified there was some presented at the Bonnie Grove facility, and it was identified that there was a shortfall in our fees and charges for that particular type of material. And I'll throw it to Alex if you wanted to add anything more there.
So through the chair, again, Andrew's introduced that correctly. We had representation from a company that was doing a remediation works at a particular location in town. That identified the fact that we didn't have that fee and charge. So for us to charge that material would be actually essentially overcharging them, because through this particular category the levy is exempt, so it is a very unique category that the Department of Environment and Science have allowed for. So I guess today we'll present that fee and charge for that specific purpose, so that we can, I guess, encourage that material to be received at our facility and not see them trucking that material elsewhere and out of town. So I think it's a step forward and a good outcome for redevelopment for our community and our area.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux?
Sorry, could you explain the retrospectively
So in this particular, so through the chair, sorry. In this particular circumstance, the company made representation to us in April of this year. Of course, we've gone through a financial year change, and we were hoping to get this before council sooner than we did. We were waiting on a number of things, such as confirmation from the Department of Environment and Science that we could legitimately introduce fee and charge and that it was exempt from levy, because I didn't want to introduce something that exposed council in a way. So for the developer, they were needing to keep progressing their particular remediation and site. So we've received that material and accepted it as a slightly different category. So the second part of this resolution is to, if council's comfortable, is to retrospectively apply this fee and charge to that material that's been received today.
So they've been overcharged or
They've
undercharged?
been overcharged.
Wonderful. Okay,
So we'll
that's
be
good.
giving them a
It's been-
discount. So yeah, giving them a discount, but for the fee that they would have received, but it's a significant revenue for council anyway. So it's
Thank you.
so.
Thanks, Alex.
Any other questions, councillors? Great, we have recommendation 1 and recommendation 2. Is there someone to move recommendation 1? Councillor Milne, Councillor Devereux to second. Councillor Milne to speak.
By having internet fees and charges, we're able to correctly charge, and in this case, give a reduction to a material into our waste facility. So we need to see it in there.
Councillor Devereux.
Filling a hole with money, that's what dumps do. Excellent.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Milne to close.
Happy to move the vote.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. And recommendation 2, someone to move. Councillor Milne, someone to second. Councillor Devereux. Councillor Milne to speak.
We've just introduced a new charge, and this resolution will be offering the discount.
Councillor Devereux.
What I like about this is it was a fair going forward with an issue, and this is a fair response to that. I love that the developer was able to go ahead. Wonderful. Thank you.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Milne to close.
Happy to move the vote.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.4. Thank you, Ms Stengel. Freshwater Creek, lot number 10.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors.
Rogers.
Joined here by Dan Rogers, Manager of Compliance. This report relates to a particular parcel of land that Council is trustee for. It's located south of Dugwine Point, at Little Freshwater Creek. It is bounded by the Great Sandy National Park to the north, south, east and west, and it's designated as a reserve for irrigation. I think we brought this to Council previously in terms of a workshop report. This is seeking a resolution to return ownership of that land or trustee back to Queensland Parks Wildlife Service. Dan, do you have anything?
I think you fairly well summed that up, Andrew. Thank you. Just happy to take any questions.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Fredman.
Has our trusteeship got any value? Well, look, I only asked the question because you can rest assured if we wanted something off national parks, we'd be paying through the nose. Is the converse true, or is it?
Hasn't been had. Sorry, through Mr Mayor. The conversation hasn't been had in negotiations with QPWS, but it is certainly.
Any other questions? Okay. We have a recommendation there, councillors. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart. Someone to second? Councillor Smoothy. Councillor Stewart to speak.
Mr Mayor, this is not an asset, this is a liability. It is quite isolated from anything else council deals with. It's of no benefit to our community or to the state. It will be of greater benefit if it is actually included in the national park which surrounds it. I know that one of my constituents who used to be the ranger at the time carry out about the issue, I think, because it's been such a long, drawn-out affair. He started dealing with it over 40 years ago. That's right. And the fact that there is a shed on it which is illegal and needs to go. Absolve us of that problem, essentially, I guess. It's just a liability. Staff, this organisation can't deal with what we've already got to deal with, let alone an isolated bit of land which is of no benefit to us. So I'm happy that we get rid of it.
Councillor Smith?
Happy to second.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Section 8. This is the exciting part of the day, Mr. O'Byrne. Item 8.1, Capital Works Program update.
Councillors, I'll take the report as being read. Mr. Watson, who's definitely the champion of this particular item and program. I'll take this report as being read. Just noting a couple of highlights is, one is we're definitely on track in relation to achieving what is, a significant capital program, budgeted nearly 112 mil and forecast now to be in the order of $115 million for this current financial year. So the fact that we are on track is a credit to the team that's actually undertaking the work. And credit to Mr. Watson himself in leading that team.
Any questions, councillors? Okay. No questions. We have a recommendation there. Is there someone to move? Councillor Smith, someone to second? Councillor Mill, Councillor Smith to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's always good to get updates. We haven't done a great deal in capital works program yet, have we? Percentage wise, but unless we're going to really step it up now till end of next year.
Yeah, correct. Yep. Which is, I guess, reflected through the phasing expenditure in the report.
So that's good to hear. Put all my faith in you, Mr. Watson, and hopefully you'll succeed.
Councillor Mill.
Given that we've actually got quite a large capital works program, one of the largest I think we've ever had, it's good to have these quarterly updates and explanations on those exceptions-only projects, and we all do realise there are circumstances that happen. Really good to have the updates, look forward to seeing them coming, and I know the projects are in great hands, so yeah, happy to note and see.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other for? Councillor Smith to close.
Happy to move, thanks.
With that, we will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We now have 8.2 flood recovery infrastructure service for the update. Thank you, Mr. Watson.
Mr. Mayor. Again, I'll take this report as being read. Again, with a quick summary of where we're at. Firstly, I'd like to thank the team from AECOM who have actually assisted us in progressing this program of works. This program of works for this current financial year forms circa 60% of our overall capital program, so it is a significant chunk. The pleasing thing that I can say is we are, further to this report, we're actually on track to actually have all of the works within the program out and with contractors and consultants appointed for delivery before Christmas. So that will mean that through next year we'll be actually in the process of actually undertaking all the delivery aspects for every single flood recovery item. So that's a significant step forward, and that's a lot of thanks to the efforts being made by the AECOM team.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart.
Mr. Mayor, I've got interest in voluntary home buyback scheme, because when I went through the list, 2/3 of them are in my division, which I found interesting. And as I went through the properties, some are next to parks and probably just out of the parks, and others, I've had constituents, I've mentioned this to you before, I think, raise concerns about what can be done with the land, because especially like in rural areas, are worried about the land might be looked after, be weeds and fire hazard and whatever. So I'm just wondering at what stage we're at with deciding what happens, how we're dealing with the land that we are acquiring.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. It is a challenge for council to be taking on board additional land from a maintenance point of view. It does present additional operational costs from a maintenance perspective. A lot of these blocks are potentially isolated, so the only option really is for council to actually take them on board and then maintain them at a particular level. So in summary, the blocks of land that are actually vacated and are adjacent to existing residences, we will be actually talking to those residences in relation to the potential to purchase those additional blocks as an option to extend their backyards, basically, with no construction being allowed on them. So that is one option that we're considering. So the other options that we're talking about is from a general council maintenance point of view, is putting some landscaping in there and putting some very low maintenance aspects so that we don't actually get encumbered with significant operational expense down the track. But it is a very good point, Councillor, and what we'd like to be doing is bring back to Council a summary status as to what we propose to do with each of these blocks of land as we actually repossess them.
When do you expect that to happen? Summary status.
Yeah, so what we'll be doing is actually putting together a summary report early next year, and that will actually also inform the budget for moving forward. As I mentioned, there is a potential additional operational expense with maintaining these properties.
Yep.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Smead.
I noticed that we've had some funding for Inwood Rail Trail. Have we had any funding for the Kilkeevan to Kingaroy Rail Trail at all?
Councillor, I'll have to take that on notice. I'm not aware that we have, but if I can...
Because I'm sure it would have suffered some flood damage. Anyway, I just thought I'd ask the question.
Mr. Evans, you'll take that on notice.
Yeah, not a grant.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there. Is there someone to move? Councillor Devereux, someone to second. Councillor Smead, Councillor Devereux to speak.
Thank you very much for the information. It's always good to get something that's fairly comprehensive, and I do appreciate it because it does make it easier when it comes to answering questions from people. So thank you, and I'm happy to support.
Councillor Smead.
It's good to see that we're getting on top of some of this, so I'm happy to second.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Devereux to close.
Nothing further to add, thank you.
We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.3, RFT 2022230242.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll take this report again as being read. The only aspect that I will highlight to you is, and I've mentioned this before this morning, one of the previous items this morning, is what we will notice is the price escalation from the original estimates for this particular package. The original estimates of the value of the work was in the order of $8 million. We're now talking about in excess, or in the order of $9 million. We're now talking nearly $17 million to actually undertake this package of works. And that is actually, those price escalations are being seen right throughout the state and the country in relation to this style of work. And I will actually supplement that comment by saying all of that additional cost is actually covered by QRA. It's not actually impacting upon council's own budget.
Any questions, councillors? Just will have a comment for you and the team, Mr. O'Byrne. I have noted the work that our staff are doing. and I'm well informed about our pricing structure. And it is good to know that we are actually under the commercial rate at the moment. So maybe when it comes to our TMR billing, we need to bring our prices in line with what the contractors seem to charge at the moment. But the work that the team are performing, and I've seen contractor work and staff work side by side, and it is far above what the contractors are delivering. So it's that is a wonderful achievement by the staff to be competing in that space commercially on price and quality and beating them hands down. So yeah, if you can pass on our appreciation to the staff, that would be wonderful. Any questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there. Two of them actually, so we'll deal with recommendation one. Is there someone to move? Councillor Smerdon, Councillor Jensen to second. Councillor Smerdon to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's good to see that this package is finally out to tender and been accepted. It's been a long time in the works, but as we know, it takes a while to get everything approved, especially federal. But no, it's good to see that we will finally be getting some progress on these roads, so happy to move.
Councillor Jensen?
It's good to see the little bits of blue and green spray paint all over the roads. You know that they're getting there, so you're happy to see the roads getting fixed and happy that it's not costing us any money either. Good job.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Fredman?
Mr Mayor, these rates are very hard to accept. We're talking millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars more what would be determined, what people would say would be normal rates. We've got no option. It is nationwide. It's the time to have a small construction company, become a millionaire very quickly, but the work has to be done. I am very pleased that we're actually getting it done, and we're just hiding the pain of having to pay so much, albeit federal government's paying.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Smerdon to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As been said to me in times gone by, that sometimes it's good to have a flood, actually get some work done that isn't paid for by council. So, yeah. So, and the paint on the road isn't for a heavy night up for you, Councillor.
What's that?
The paint on the road isn't for after a heavy night for you.
No.
No, I'm happy to move. It's good for council to get these roads repaired. It's a good achievement for the region.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 2. Someone to move? Councillor Milne. Someone to second? Councillor Smerdon. Councillor Milne to speak.
Oh, just the delegation of CEO allows us to actually streamline and get things done happening quicker, so happy to delegate that.
Councillor Smerdon.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Milne to close.
You move the vote.
We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.4, Water and Sewage Service Annual Review.
Thanks, Mr.
23.
I'll just invite Mr Scott Hughes to actually join me. So, councillors, so this report is basically the annual review in relation to the mapping out the areas that we provide services to. It's pretty well as simple as that. I'm going to take the report as read, but if you've got any questions, by all means, bring them forward.
Any questions, Councillor Pollock?
Was this ever workshopped at all? This is the first time we've seen it.
The annual review?
Yeah, because I know I missed a workshop, I did this. Right, that's right. Just wasn't sure, I didn't want to say. Yeah, because I would like to have got into it a bit more rather than just sort of being, oh, here it is, and look, and not the fault of anybody here, but you can never read this PDS very well, so I'm just trying to understand what's been added and what's not added, so you probably need to go to pages 240 of the report. So looking at, if I could ask a question, the first one, I see the green bit, there's only one green bit that's been added, but I can't see, I don't know what the yellow bits are, because I can't actually read the, what's the yellow mean?
The yellow bits are within the service area.
Yep.
Well, they have connection to water.
Yep.
They're outside of the service area because we can't meet our customer service standards for those properties. So
Right.
they have access to water, but their pressure might not be as much,
Correct.
the flow might not be as much, but historically they've been connected. The green is that new estate out near Fauna Road, where the two towers are on
Yep.
River Road. So that's a whole new estate. So that block's all going to be cut up into housing.
Yep.
And the Imbil one, again, similarly with the green, is where there's a new estate popped up over there.
Rightio. So, okay, and I get a little bit, I suppose I'm just interested, I'm interested in the south side area, and I know the problems I have with the little island that sits on Alpha Road, like you would know the resident there. He is going, it says here on page 242, he's going to get sewer, but then further down, you're refusing him water, and I know that he doesn't even want the sewer, but he wants water, but he can't get water, but he'll get sewer, and his neighbouring property will get water, but won't get sewer. So it's like, it's just really confusing sometimes with these. I know it's probably not the forum to talk about it, but I'm just interested to know why you have these islands and why can't, if you've got people all around them, you know, the property's completely surrounded, people have water and sewer, and he can't, so.
Different pipes.
Some things flow downhill, yeah, obviously, but, it's not here to start talking about, the engineer must have looked at it and went, yes, we can service it or not, or.
Some of these properties are by development, so they've been tagged as allowed to be subdivided. That particular property below is subdivided and then actually connected to sewer, unable to connect to water, but there are, if the people above them now cannot connect to sewer until that section has been subdivided, and that's mainly due to the engineering, how the pipes are all gravity fed through the town.
Yeah.
So I can get some more information on that for you if you like.
Okay, I know specifically in that instance, the residents were told they can't get it until that person subdivides. I know the owners who says there's no way I'm subdividing, I've got kids growing up, I'm here for the next 15 years, so it's not going to happen. I suppose the other thing I'm asking about the plan is there's, you know, like even looking at the sewer one, there's lots of areas in Southside not in the green zone. Is that because they're parts of the future stages? So I'm trying to understand that they will get approved like next year when there's stage 9 and 10 happening, that map will come back, it'll be on
So
there.
next year when we do these maps, because they're an annual report that we do,
Yep.
so next year 8, 9 and 10 will be added to the mapping, and then any future stages as they come online will be added to the mapping.
So then isn't this a bit behind, because we're approving this now, but we know that 9's already, well, 8's done, 9's going to be going, so you're going to be doing areas that is not actually on this map?
Yeah, so stage 8, the gravity may have been completed, but the connections have not. We made the decision to not start charging people. Basically, if they're on this map, they get charged rate for the sewer, even though we can't connect them yet until we go through the connection process.
Right.
So we decided to keep them off until the next year, so they will start getting sewer rate as of July next year.
Right, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that you couldn't charge them, or if they're on the map, they get charged. Because I know one of the complaints I've had from residents, I get this quite right, but like they want to get sewer put on or whatever on, but they get referred to this map and goes, well, you're not on the map, therefore we can't even consider it. Like as we know, we've got a guy on Sorensen Road, he's prepared to fork out a lot of money for him and his neighbours, but no one will consider his thing to say, oh, can I put sewer on at my expense because those properties aren't on the map. So it's a bit of a, you know, so we can't do it because of this, and then they get rejected because it's not on the plan, you know, so, I don't know.
We work on those ones by case.
Yep.
Again, it comes down to whether it can be gravity, whether there's a rise and then there's a pump station and all these extra costs come in.
Yep.
I don't think people understand how much that can add up sometimes.
Yeah, oh yeah, well, I know he was happy to pay for it, so.
Perhaps a chance for colleagues
I know it's-
to organise discussion.
Yeah, no,
with the
yeah, I know,
relevant
it's sort
parties, and that's probably the best forum to
Yeah.
work through those.
And I realise that too, because that's a bit sort of like, oh, here it is, now we've got to prove this, and I haven't had a chance to thrash it out. And I know what's going to happen is we'll agree to it, and then I'll go thrash it out, go, oh, too late, it's been approved. I see at the end of 2024.
Well, they can be updated. It's like everything. We're approving it at a particular day of time. If there's changes need to be made for the future, they can be made.
I've asked a couple of times, and Mr. Chandler said it'll get reviewed at Christmas this year. Here we are. It hasn't been reviewed, and then so I'm almost like wanting to say, can we just lay this on the table? But I don't want to hold it up. I want it to go ahead. But sometimes these discussions afterwards don't happen. But anyway.
I just think if you connect the relevant people with the staff, so they can actually discuss a proposal that they want to submit to council, then that would probably help in the outcome.
Yep.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Mill?
Just to understand, so the areas that are highlighted in the shaded is where we service. So notice that Carlo Point at Rainbow doesn't have any shading around it for either water or sewer, because sewer goes leftly to Carrion Park and water goes all the way out to the boat ramp, and it's not shaded. Does it need it?
And potentially back here. That's Rainbow.
Yeah, the water one shows it on the map, the sewer one doesn't. It just cuts it off.
It is part of the rainbow cuts off there.
Yeah, have you got this water one?
I've got that here. Yeah, that's a small one. So yeah, I see what you mean, it cuts off here.
Yeah,
What you're saying?
it's not shaded. It's Carlo Point.
Yeah.
Does it need shading or not?
Potentially I'll take on
Okay,
those.
thank you. I just noticed it, but they've got it. I can see it. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart. Councillor Spurn second. Councillor Stewart, speak.
Water and sewer are some of the most important things we provide, and so it's good to know who we take responsible for in terms of water and sewer, and who needs to take responsibility for themselves, people like me. I'm happy to move that we have maps that are as close to accurate as we can make them.
Councillor Spurn.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add.
Go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We have the late item 8.5. Expressions of interest for building asset condition assessments. Mr. O'Byrne.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, in the essence of actually reducing the number of reports we bring to council, I'll just outline the reasons why this has come as a late report. We originally had intended to simply go to a straight tender to actually provide or to secure the services of an organisation to undertake a comprehensive condition assessment of all our building assets. That process doesn't need council resolution to actually simply go to tender. Obviously, the appointment of a successful contractor does. In the process of putting the scope together for undertaking the condition assessments, we established that there were a number of gaps in the information that we've got, which didn't enable us to put a tight scope together to go to tender, which would then mean we'd end up going out for tender for a scope of work which was either very broad or very loose, which then opened up council to have variations through the undertaking of that work, and or it would actually mean an escalation in the tendered price that someone would be prepared to actually submit. So what this is actually intending to do is to say, okay, the best process is to go out for an expression of interest. Through that process, we'll actually select a contractor or organisation or organisations to actually then seek tenders from, but in a very specific manner that we can work with them to enable a fleshing out of the gaps, if you like, in that scope. So what I'm talking about here is simply there are some building assets where we don't have actual records of floor areas. We don't actually have records of how much roof area. We don't have records of how many water cylinders, all those sort of things. So we can't really define a scope. So the expression of interest will enable us to go through a due process, select an organisation that we can then work with and part of their engagement will be to actually flesh out some of those gaps in the scope. In order to go through that expression of interest process, we need a council resolution in accordance with legislation.
Any questions, councillors? No. We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second? Councillor Smurden, Councillor Stewart to speak.
Mr Mayor, when there's a possibility of lots of variations, that's when contractors make their most profit. So it is good to have a clear scope before we go to contract so that we can control the cost. So I think it's a very good process. So I'm happy to move.
Councillor Smurden.
Echo Councillor Stewart's sentiments. Try and do things to budget would be good. So if we haven't fixed the scope, that will try and keep a good budget. Happy to see it.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add. Thanks.
We will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We have one extra item there. Councillor Milne will do a report on their attendance at the conference.
As required by resolution, I have to provide a report within 6 weeks of attending conference. So basically, I attended some various forums and sessions, put in the Bite on Dangerous Dogs panel, which has outlined just the key proposals for the Joint Task Force for changes to the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act, which was proposed to Parliament, which I believe is one of the introducers law. Key takeaways for our council would have been the education, responsible pet ownership and accountability are the way forward, the key ones, and I believe our team's already looking at that. The Coastal Council Segment Forum, I chose to go that over the Roads Forum because I believe we had other people in that one. It was focused around the Great Barrier Reef and Reef Guardians Councils, Reef 2050 Plan, Q Coast, urban water stewardship and urban water management, amongst other issues. It's a very good forum and it's so many relevant points to include and is including avenues of funding for various projects. While we may not think about the Great Barrier Reef in this council, we probably should be. Our LGA is a catchment area for the Mary River flow. There's the southern end of the reef. Top threats for the reef that council can assist through is with the water and waste management, and it's water and wastewater, land management and community with education and partnerships. And I believe the team are looking at those things respectively. Invisible Enemy, Queensland Council Cyber Saga. It had the Blackwell, Tambo and Isaac regional councils give very sobering accounts of their experiences as cyber attack affected councils. It's a matter of when and not if you'll be hit. Ongoing business continuity plan testing is important, training is essential and good policies and procedures will help, but if there is a breach, communication to all stakeholders is vital. However, the road to recovery is long. I know our teams in space are taking the matter very seriously. And it was good to know that Gympie Regional Council is actively mitigating this risk and practising cyber hygiene, because it was actually really scary to hear what those councils went through. It was basically blackout time. South East Queensland Somerset Rail Trail. It was an interesting presentation. It's a project directly links to some of the opportunities in our region. A strategic approach sets the foundations for what can be sometimes seen as an ambitious, however visionary, plan, but the practical plans in place gives a pathway to providing the community infrastructure for the future. Determination working through the dissent. So there was actually opposition to the rail trail expressed at the beginning, but the outcome has been a strong economic returns and improved visitor experience. So it's worth our investments, what we're doing with that in that space. The Mackay Young Mayors program, which I believe Councillor Devereux highlighted internally with us, was quite inspirational. I've heard about it. To see the process of developing the young participants into tomorrow's leaders and possible politicians was refreshing. I'd love to be part of something here, but I feel this council needs to mature probably a little bit more before we go mentoring other young people. But I thought it was absolutely fascinating to see. They even had little campaign posters and everything. It was sort of cool. The Yarrabah microgrid was a good case study increasing livability and general life conditions. The council taking a lead on solutions for a remote community, being mostly solar, or as the mayor put it, mining the sun. Although not a primary council role, the initiative gave stability to a township and the flow and effects of resilience, household debt reduction, improved health and education, behavioural changes and economic opportunities. Learning here is where should councils invest in non-primary role projects, as it is evidence from this case study that taking a lead on livability improvements is an investment for a community's future, especially when those remote. The Palm Island Aboriginal Shire, the community-led night patrol, it was quite unique because they're a new community. It's a very successful case involving First Nations leaders stepping up in a quick reaction to an increase in youth crime. It started with volunteers having conversations with young people about respect and love, and then they progressed to employment of those adult leaders. It's a great example of community solutions to community problems. It grew from having a strong peer networking relationships with the community and working in common to build a better future with council facilitating, but community leading was really, really good to see that community grow. Energise Etheridge was about reinventing, capitalising on past and current assets to maximise the opportunity. The Kidston Clean Energy Hub was combining wind, solar and pumped hydro, and the project highlighted that good foundation planning of infrastructure like bridges and roads. They needed to be considered prior, not halfway through, and it gave spotlight to reusing old productivity areas to be used in other ways, such as the old gold mines to go to pumped hydro, which I found was quite fascinating. Saving Glendon, it's a story we're all probably familiar with, but to hear it from the words of the Isaac Mayor was quite moving, and how the power of people can work to change a ministerial view on a matter. The speed at which the campaign launched was impressive. It was within 48 hours, which shows that strong leadership and community backing can make things happen. My favourite quote of confidence came from the Isaac Mayor, which was people over politics. Cost shifting panel had mayors, CEO and a councillor talk about the examples of cost shifting in their respective councils, including taking on services as providers as last resort, as basically the public expected. Another example of councils being more than roads, rates and rubbish, as the service provision has been expanded to well over and beyond. However, a takeaway is how much can we take on or should we take on? There was a lot of successful advocacy motions. I'm not going to read them all out. We've all got links to our conduit on the outcomes, but a lot of those were relevant to our council, and I learnt from sitting in that one as well, is that maybe other councils had something that's not relevant to you at all, but you understand the benefit that that gives, so that's where your voting power comes in to support those. The trade stall, there's too many to highlight, individual, but it was great to hear positive feedback from traders that already work with Gympie Regional Council or have in the past, and I learnt a lot about various processes, systems and products that are out there in the future doing business in local government. Now, I've got this lovely little step counter on here. It was a thing called Step Your Way to 10K competition. I didn't actually quite catch on to what the competition was until the second day, but I still came third in the quest to win 10,000 for a community project. That actually enabled me to go walking a lot in Gladstone, and it was actually a really lovely place, and what shouted out to me was everyone was really friendly and it felt like home. I mean, I was nobody, you're in the middle of nowhere, and they're still all ever saying hello at 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was. So I thank Council for the opportunity to attend. It was very beneficial for me. It was an educational experience. My understanding of local government and beyond is greatly heightened. So there we go. Thank you.
Councillors, that concludes our meeting for today. So thank you for your attendance. Thank you to the gallery. Thank you to staff.